First of all, thank you everyone for coming to the ACM meeting.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys.
We're going to do these every other week, and then every week that we don't do a meeting, we're planning on doing study groups to help teach people some more obscure topics. Where we'll be learning alongside everyone together.
Yep. We're going to start off by learning the MERN stack, which is MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. So be on the lookout for a message about that.
All right, we good to go?
Yep.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to my presentation on the history of video games and how game development has changed over the years. We're just going to touch on a few subjects, just talk about the history, the hardware, how development has changed, and a little bit of the culture as well. Maybe. The origin of video games. A lot of people believe that Pong was the first game that was released, but there were actually a few games before that. There was Tennis for Two, which was the first game, and not a lot of people could play it. There wasn't a lot of interest in video games at the time, but some guys produced Tennis for Two, and it was the actual first game to be on an actual screen. And then Space War came after. It was more of a college people, like university style. You had to have a supercomputer to make it work game, but that kind of got everything to take off a little bit. And then Computer Space was the first arcade game that was released. And then it was Pong that gets all the recognition because it was the first at-home console that you had. You had 12 games. Pong was one of the biggest ones, and there were all these recreations of Pong that really got the industry started. All right. How gaming equipment has changed over the years. The first at-home console that had Pong on it was the Odyssey. It came preloaded with 12 different games, and they released a few more games after. But you really didn't have a huge game selection or high storage for these games. It was really just where we started with the consoles. But then we got to the PS1, which was more so our era of gaming, where we really started to take off and play games, the games that we know and love and still probably play. You could buy the discs, you could get the discs. They had more storage space on it. You were able to play a better selection of games. These companies were able to come in and be able to start creating these games. And even at this point, some of the games required multiple discs. But then we get into the era that we're in now, where it's like the PC Master Race or PS5, Xbox Series X, where we have all this storage space and all this high-powered equipment in our own home to where we're able to actually run these very intensive games to where we can run all these different things that we've come out with. And you can also download most of the games from the internet, and then you can really modify these games to where you can pretty much add anything you want into it with hacks and stuff. Now you can really just have a lot of fun with it. All right, development's changed quite a bit in a very short amount of time. But with the early development, a lot of people really didn't see a future for the games. They were just more so experimenting with it. You could have a single person make a game if you wanted to. There really wasn't that much into it. But then around the 90s through the early 2000s, online games became very prominent. You had a lot of RPGs and different games you could play online with all of your friends. And development teams were needed to make sure that all this stuff was getting fixed that needed to be fixed. All of the bugs and stuff with the game. You really wanted it to be perfect. So you had these teams that could develop graphics, that could do all the coding side of things, anything that you needed. You couldn't just do it with one singular person. But nowadays we have the AAA titles like Call of Duty and other games that really allow you to open up the horizons. You have all these different game modes. You have all these different characters, all these different storylines that you have to follow. So you really need a larger team to be able to develop things like that. And also nowadays, you're able to really just pick and pull from anything that you want. You can get people to create these graphics for you and allow you to be able to work a lot faster to develop new games and really get the ball rolling. Main languages used, C, C++ and C# are both used regularly, with Unreal Engine for C++, and then C# is used for Unity. But there's also a few games that are coded in Java. Here's an example of old school private server code. Just an example of code for health regeneration, just so you can kind of see the layout of everything. But one thing that's really been able to open the door to a lot of people are the blueprints. You really don't have to know a language per se, just how to use different functions and different things for creation of the video games. But you really aren't limited to just these things here. You could really use anything that you want to, as long as you can create the game. So you could be familiar with quite a few things and still be able to get the job done. The video game culture, whenever it first started out, there really wasn't a lot of people that showed interest in it. It started at universities where they had all this equipment that they could create these games and stuff like that. And nowadays we're more so into these game jams where you can go out, meet all these people, and really network and socialize with people, get ideas, create games, and just really be able to get into other people's minds and really figure out, hey, how did you create this? Or what can we do to make this work better? And just have those quick game events to where you can get the ball rolling on your own projects or anything else that you wanted to do. And then game development and game design have really changed a lot, because you really do need multiple people to be able to do the graphics and the back end kind of thing. Like, it really is not that easy to do by yourself, unless you're just a mastermind, which honestly would be pretty awesome. But you really have to have these groups get together and be able to work with one another to create these titles and make them really successful. But there's a lot of places that we can go with. Right now, we're at virtual reality is really big. It's really making its way into the market with all these titles that are coming out now. You have the PS5, you have cars that are driving themselves. What's next? Will we be able to actually get into the video games with Neuralink or something like that? I kind of leave this slide open to just see kind of any ideas that you guys would have towards the future, because I see that VR has been around for a while now, and it's definitely made a staple. So yeah, I just leave this part open for everybody to voice their opinions if they'd like.
I definitely think that virtual reality is going to be the next big leap in gaming experience, and maybe even for like humanity as a whole, because if you don't like something about how reality is, you can just, you know, enter a virtual world where that's the case. There's a whole aspect of interactive media that's unexplored in virtual reality. Like when you're playing a video game, there's a lot of senses that you don't have. Like you don't have touch, tastes, smell. You don't have that. You have basically sight and sound from your display, and that's about it. But in virtual reality, if you're able to do that, there's a whole other spectrum of ideas and feelings that you could experience that could take the idea of video games to a whole new level that's like unknown to us at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that AI might be used in video games more often. Not so much the AI like a computer opponent, although that will still stay around probably. I mean, deep learning. Like in the new Spider-Man game, Miles Morales, they just added this update that improves the muscles on the characters using deep learning. And NVIDIA has this feature right now that takes textures from the games and upscales them to 4K. And then that way, the client machine doesn't have to do all the work. And it actually produces better looking textures than native 4K textures. So I think that we're going to start seeing deep learning being used for game development more often.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
Have you guys ever played that? If you've done virtual reality, it's Google Paint or something like that.
Tilt brush.
Yeah, that's with Tilt Brush, and that blew that was my first VR experience, and you were like inside of the art that you create. That was insane. That was like 3 years ago too.
The stuff they've been
Yeah.
able to do with VR so far already has been pretty crazy, and it'll only get
I,
cooler. from
yeah,
there.
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's like-
I've seen some stuff like sculpting in VR, and that's really good because you don't need to worry about like the mess of like sculpting and shaving or painting or anything like that. You can just do it in a virtual reality. You don't have the physical media to work with, and that might detract from the authenticity or make it feel less genuine to some people. But it's still a viable means of expressing your artistic form, even if it's in a virtual media.
Like at some point, you'll just hook it up to a 3D printer and print out your sculpture or something cool. Like that.
Exactly.
I think a slightly different direction is that more of a culture shift than a technology shift is like streaming has gotten like mega popular recently, especially in COVID times. And so I think a really neat direction I've seen some of it, like especially indie games taking, is using the fact that some people have access to a hive mind of 1,000 or so audience members, and so that you can hook your like chat up into the game, and then they actually have various effects on it, such as most of the ones I've seen are like you just have or like like various polls going on that'll affect the game or whatnot. But I feel like new games that really tap into that, they could do some crazy things, just because if you have hundreds of people all trying to interact with this one thing, I feel like there's a lot of cool things you could do with that haven't really been explored yet.
You guys seen the virtual YouTubers like the Code Miko, I think is her name. Like that
YouTubers.
is
Ah,
Yeah.
yes.
YouTubers.
that's wild. Or she like transposes. She has that bodysuit and she like transposes like a video game character onto her her actual body. It's wild.
Yeah, they might make games where you put on a suit like that and you get the
Yes.
full haptic experience, which I don't know, I feel like that'd be inconvenient, but at the same time it would be really immersive.
I'm thinking like Sword Art Online. If you guys are
Mhm.
weebs, like
Yeah.
that's
There we go. Hopefully
like
not
myself.
like too close to it, but at least technology wise. Yeah.
Right.
Feel free to unmute Chris and Joshua, by the way. This is just free talk at this point.
You don't have to force
VTubers
them
is
to
a
interact
little-
if they don't want to.
They've been talking in the chat. I'm
You
just
are
saying.
going to talk and you are going to like it.
You are one of us
Everyone's
now.
been that guy where they're typing out their message, their insight, and the conversation changes, and they can't hit enter anymore because it's no
So
longer
true.
relevant.
true.
I've
That's
felt
relatable.
that, yeah.
That's relatable. Yeah.
Especially
But y'all-
during class.
Yeah, you're good. Either way, just an option for you.
What genre of games, or maybe a handful of games, do you feel has been most influential in video game community as a whole?
Like recently or over all time?
We're talking about video game history here. It's the entire scope.
In terms of communities, I'd say
Tetris.
probably shooters, because that's sort of where esports popped up from, I think.
I think like RPGs though, right? Like Zelda.
Well, we're
Like
talking like in terms of building communities, right?
In community, in like the video game communities, or in as building the video game genre as a whole. Like, what has been most influential to develop video games as like a staple form of entertainment?
Oh, well, in that case,
Warcraft
I'd
3
say
custom games.
platformers maybe, because Super Mario Brothers, like that was huge for the time, and like another Mario game, Mario 64, that literally defined how you make games in 3D.
I think platformers definitely opens up video games to a lot of people because they're considered more casual. I think single player games in general are considered more of a casual game versus a competitive game, in where having a game in your home that you can play on your own to introduce yourself at your own pace and enjoy it without the stress of like you play video games to avoid the stress. It's like a de-stressor or a form of entertainment. I think more casual or home games for like home consoles really opened the way for video games as a form of entertainment to gather popularity.
I think mobile games also kind of went into it because it's like Like before, it's like you had to, go out of your way, buy $100 console or whatever. But especially nowadays, everyone has computers in their pockets. So anything it really lowers the barrier of entry. And like I remember back in like my middle school, high school days, it's like everyone was on that Flappy Bird, Doodle Jump, all that jazz, Angry
Mhm.
Birds thing. And that was, I feel like, a gateway to a lot of people be like, hey, games are fun. And then once they, actually try more complex games on a computer or whatever, then it just goes deeper from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think about how like our parents, for example, well, at least some of us, like they might not have been into video games, but there was a trend on Facebook where everybody was playing Farmville. So it's like it's bringing people into these games that wouldn't normally play video games, and how that kind of like broadened the outreach of games for a lot of people.
Bringing some dark memories back there, Nick.
People like sharing they want you to like click their farm. I can't remember how it went, but you had to get coins.
And weirdly enough, Chris, you bring up like D&D and how that got people to video games. I think it'd actually be going the other direction now, where so many people are getting tired of just like the limitations of video games and getting more into D&D now as a result, because people
That's the problem. They're treating D&D like a video game. That is the issue with D&D right now.
I had a question for you guys.
go for it. Yeah.
So you were talking about earlier how there's so many different things to explore in VR, like the senses haven't been explored and all of that. And I was just wondering, do you think that's kind of like, if you remember when the first I don't know what it's called, but like the sensors in the phone that can sense tilt and stuff like that, and the touch
Gyroscope.
screens, like
Gyroscope?
the gyroscope, every phone game used that for the controls and to like do a cool thing
Oh
with it.
yeah.
Do you think that like with VR, like doing different senses, or like just the fact that it's in VR, we're in a stage right now where they're kind of like exploring the inherent qualities of it rather than actually taking it to what it can be?
I
I'm
mean,
not
for
sure what you
sure,
mean
it's all-
by
Like
exploring the qualities instead of what
like the paint thing, for example, that's not like a super, like I feel like that is very similar to when like they were like Doodle Jump, where you would tilt to like jump on the thing. Like it's more so about the device itself than what it could be used for. It's just exploring what the device can do in the most basic way.
So, yes, I would say a lot of VR games, especially ones like that are made 2 or 3 years ago, are just tech demos to show off that, hey, look at what we can do. And like
Yeah.
the only like VR game that I would call like a AAA actual game so far is like Half-Life Alyx, is like the example I can point to and be like, this is one that's doing more than just showcasing technology. This is the one actually utilizing it.
Yeah, I think whenever a new like novelty for video game comes out, like motion control, like when a motion control out, like every game had to put motion control in there, even if it wasn't relevant. Like,
Wii Sports was the peak of motion control.
yeah,
We mastered that right out of the gate.
yeah, we peaked early with motion control. Like Link's crossbow training, or like that weird Star Wars game for the Xbox Kinect or something like that.
Oh, Connect Star
Oh, the
Wars. Yes,
pork
the
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah,
Well,
I
the
think
dancing Han Solo.
Yeah, I think when you continue to treat it as a novelty, you really limit your scope to what you can do. You're like, oh, that person over there, they have motion control. Let's Wii Sports. Let's make our Star Wars game needs that to compete. Instead of like pushing the envelope, you're just doing what everyone else is doing.
Wii Sports is the bomb though. Like it holds up to this day. I'm telling you.
I agree.
I think one thing VR has a huge thing in advantage is that I looked into making a VR game just because I was curious and I have the setup for it, and it turns out it's actually very, very easy to get started. Like you just download Unity and it already has all the libraries there for you. I was able to make a game where you just throw balls in a cup, and it was so the fact that everyone has easy like free access. Obviously, you need the headset, so not quite free access, but the door is much more wide open for people to explore it. Because I think indie developers are a lot of the people that push innovation in video games.
Yep.
So do you guys think that like how long until VR is going to actually seriously move out of that infancy stage?
It has to become more commercially viable.
Mhm,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like the Quest right now that came out recently, that was like $300. Like that is the bare minimum, I think. Like that's the most it could possibly cost for people to get in. But the Quest is also limited because it's not an actual computer. It's got its own
Right.
problems going on. So once it becomes commercially viable for a company to actually invest in making it worthwhile, it's not going to go many places, I don't think. But I only give it a couple of years until that's the case.
Yeah.
Hardware is just getting better and better.
The Quest is selling really well, though, isn't it? At least the new model.
Oh no, yeah, I think it's doing great. It's just it's a step towards where we need to be. It's not the end goal.
Yeah, VR and video games, the oldest I can think of would be like the Virtual Boy, that thing you like stood up and like put your head in. And because of its like commercial failure, because nobody developed anything for it, because it was so like brand spanking new, that probably pushed like interest in VR and developing for it way back, because they're like, okay, this failed, let's put it on the back burner for a while.
It's like even something like the Connect, I feel like if it was 10 years later and had the technology we had today, I feel like it could have been an amazing success. But just since it came out when it did, and the only people that developed for it were the people that just made like little mini games. And but like now people want Connects to because the IR like sensors and everything they have, like people are using them for like full body tracking and stuff. So like on one hand we like have the technology, but on the other hand we don't have the software to actually utilize all the technology.
Right.
I got to roll out. I'm gonna be on a panel in about 5 minutes. So
Yeah, good luck,
Right.
man.
it was a
Feel free.
pleasure. Thank you guys.
We'll probably link
Yeah,
to it
good
once
luck.
this meeting ends.
See ya.
Yeah, see ya.
Cool.
Cool.
Eh.
See
Any other
anybody?
discussions people got?
Yeah.
It's okay to say no. We can wrap up whenever.
It won't hurt my feelings any.
The VR thing was the main thing I was interested in.
Yeah, the VR is really sweet.
Can say if you can afford a Quest and it like looks neat to you, I recommend it. But obviously that's up to the individual and their budget.
I have like a pretty good gaming PC. If I was gonna get one, should I get the Quest or should I get one that like
If you
hooks
already
into
have the
the?
computer, go for
Yeah.
go for like if you can afford the Index, that is like 100% go for it. But obviously that's the most expensive one. But yeah, if you have the computer already, go for one that requires a computer because that open you can play almost anything on that, whereas the Quest
Yeah.
only has the Quest Store available.
Hmm.
There's a lot of
What's
really cool
the-
indie games that you can find online.
The Vive, is that the one with the cameras that you set up in your room? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, the Vive, the Index, pretty much anything but the Quest is going to require you set up base stations around the room.
okay.
But again, it's it's
I feel
definitely
like
a luxury.
VR
at the
would
moment.
VR would not be good for me because I have a really small room.
You could sit. You could sit and play.
It depends how much you want to invest. You will get less out of it the less space you have.
Yeah, that is
Mhm.
true.
I was fortunate to have an empty room in my house.
Very
It is a lot
nice.
more fun when you can run around and run into a wall on accident.
Yeah, that's me at 3 o'clock in the morning. All you hear is dunk.
What I'm wondering is like if VR gets to a point where like you get in a full suit and you have to walk around in real life to
God,
walk around
yeah.
in game, how would that be done? Well, I mean, I guess you would use like a shred mill sort
Yeah,
of
they
like
have
a
those like Omni treadmills these days.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But even those, I feel like the next
That would be
stage of
expensive
VR
though.
we're gonna see is someone's gonna like rent out a whole warehouse and make a VR like park
Yeah.
where it's just
Yeah,
like
I
you
think it's gonna
wander
be
through
more
the
of an arcade.
warehouse like that, and then at some point, if they ever discover like Neuralink where you can just go unconscious and go in the game that that would be like the way. But there's a lot that has to happen before that's even possible.
That's exciting.
And also that would be scary because like what if something
yeah.
goes wrong and it ends up being like Sword Art Online where everybody's trapped inside?
It doesn't. You don't have to be malicious for that to happen. If you're messing with brain stuff, there's a lot. There would be a lot of legislation that happens before that becomes commercially available.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to get it on the black market. That's the only way.
Would you use black market brain
No.
implants?
That's how you end up in Sword Art Online, right there.
I mean, they have those. They're just called drugs right now. If you really want that experience.
Oh man.
All right.
Drug Art Online.
Cool.
Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. We had
Yeah.
some good discussions.
Yeah, we really appreciate y'all showing up.
You want to do one more shout out for the MERN?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
next week we're doing a study group for learning MERN.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually, what is the format that taking? Is it another Zoom call or what?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if we're gonna do it in the Zoom call or in the Discord server.
We'll likely do it in the Discord server because it's more visible that way, and everyone can just
Mhm.
pop in and out whenever they want. So
Yeah,
expect to
I
see
agree.
a new voice channel for that in the Discord around this time next Thursday.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun.
we'll post a message this Sunday about it with more details. And yeah, what we're most likely going to do is we're going to drop an introductory video that people can watch if they have time, and then we're going to do a little presentation about what that covers. And after we all learn the basics, we're probably going to start working on our own project.
So it's really, it is more of a study hall than like a lecture like this was.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. Well,
That is-
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah, thanks for
no
coming, man.
problem.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah. Thanks,
See you later.
Chris.
See ya.
See ya.